In Central Texas, scenes from a massacre, the deadliest mass shooting in American history. This is the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather reporting. Good evening. A man went on a bloody rampage in Central Texas today. He drove a truck into a cafeteria, opened fire on the crowd inside, and then committed suicide. It happened in the city of Killeen, about 50 miles north of Austin. When the shooting was over, more than 20 people were dead. CBS News correspondent Scott Pelley is on the scene.
It was just after noon. The cafeteria was jammed when the killer rammed his truck through a window. Witnesses say he fired with a semi-automatic pistol, pulling the trigger as fast as he could. He started by walking down the serving line. Witnesses say he fired, reloaded, and fired again.
He was pretty calm about it. He wasn't like cussing or saying this or that. He just opened fire.
After several minutes of terror, there was chaos.
I couldn't see.
All we could see was his legs and his body and the gun, and that's all.
Because we weren't going to look out from under the tables. I mean, we were underneath the tables just trying to keep from getting hit.
And they just kept saying, he's coming this way, he's coming this way. And someone behind us, who was sitting 2 or 3 tables from the window, picked up a table and threw it through the window or a chair or something.
And we just all ran out as
everybody
fast
ran out as fast as we could.
He kept shouting, I hope all this is worth it. I hope all this is worth it, Texas and Belton. Those were the only things that he kept shouting. I hope this is worth it, Texas. I hope this is worth it, Belton. And as soon as he would shout, he'd start firing again.
Just kept
randomly
on shooting.
Shot anybody in his path.
I thought it was the backfire from the car at first. And then he pulled me underneath the table, and then it just kept on going and going. He just kept shooting and shooting, and it wasn't going to stop. So that's why we ran out.
There was maybe
15 people ran out.
That actually got out of the restaurant.
The small city, unable to cope with so many wounded, called in the military for help. By late this afternoon, the dead and wounded were still being counted. At least 23 killed, perhaps as many as 20 others in hospitals. It appears to be the worst mass shooting in U.S. history. The gunman was found dead in the restaurant. He apparently shot himself. Tonight, Killeen is in shock, counting the dead, and only now learning the magnitude of the tragedy.
We are now live in front of the Luby'S restaurant, and we have with us Jackie Pleasance, who was inside the restaurant during the shooting. Jackie, what did you see? What happened?
Well, we were sitting at the table, and he came through the glass, and I thought it was a storm or something. And he came in, and I jumped from one side of the table over to the other one up under the chair. And he jumped out, and he started shooting. And then he said, "Is it worth it? Is it worth it?" This is what Belton made me do. And he started going around in a circle, and he was shooting people, just walking up and shooting. The only thing you could smell was gunpowder where he was shooting people. And you could lay there and wait for him to shoot you, because as he was going around, the circle was getting bigger and bigger. And Mr. Ray got round side of me, got over on top of me one way, and the Virginia got on the other side. And I looked up at him, and instead of him shooting me, he shot Nancy, because I believe Nancy moved or something. He shot her in the head, because when I got up, she had a big hole in the side of her head where he had shot her at. And she just laid there. She didn't move after everybody else had got it, because I started going into shock. And then the paramedics and Mr. Ray took me outside.
Did the gunman approach you?
No, but if he would have kept going around, we were the next ones he was going to shoot, because he was going around in the circle.
Thank you very much. In the building behind me, there are at least 22 bodies still in place. An Army helicopter is being called in to carry them away. Dan?
Scott, and please give our thanks to that remarkably poised and articulate young lady. Again today, the weapon of choice in Killeen.
How far can you see him? How far in there did he get? He's halfway in there. Someone said there was blood all over the front end of it. He probably they'd be coming right through there off the line, yeah.
The shots are George Hennard lived in a spacious home in Belton in a quiet neighborhood. Tonight, police have the home roped off. Neighbors say Hennard may have lived in a sedate environment, but they say he was anything but. Chris Ling says Hennard once argued with a woman who was just passing through the block.
Yeah, well, she was in her car and she was driving by, and I thought he was yelling and screaming at his lawnmower because he was banging it on the side of the road. And he was just yelling obscenities at her and telling her it was all her fault.
At the neighborhood convenience store where Hennard shopped often, Jimmy Meade, the owner, has little good to say about him.
The way he dealt with people was, just he like had no social graces at all. He'd jump in front of customers, push customers out of the way. As he left one day, he spit on the side of a customer's car, and they had to go out and clean it off. I mean, it was pretty nasty looking, and he was just like that all the time.
Witnesses at the scene of the shooting say Hennard yelled, "This is what Bell County did to me," as he opened fire, killing 22 people before turning his gun on himself. Jimmy Meade says that reference may have something to do with this wall around Hennard's home.
My understanding was that he'd gotten a disagreement over the city, told him he had to repair the wall or tear it down because the car had ran through it. And so he didn't want to do any either, I guess, and he finally repaired it, though, himself, mainly.
Under pressure from the city?
Right.
But Andre Coffey, who says he used to cut Hennard's lawn, says Hennard was a nice guy.
I used to rake it and stuff like that, and he seemed like a nice person, but I never knew that he was going to be like this.
But even today, when Hennard stopped into the convenience store at 5:30 this morning, Jimmy Meade's mother says he was very nice.
He bought a sausage and biscuit and a Temple Telegram and orange juice and some Dunker donuts.
And he charged it?
He charged it and said, "I'll be back this afternoon."
Charged and signed for it.
The eye of the nation focused on a tiny room at Killeen's police department. In this room, 100 reporters looked to one man to explain why someone would do so much damage. The pieces of the puzzle may be coming together.
Did you find any indication that he singled out women in the restaurant? What about linkages there? Some sort
Okay, right now, the only thing I can really tell you is that is one avenue of the investigation.
Can you describe a little bit of that?
No, not really. I don't have personal knowledge of it. That's still in the hands of the investigators.
Chief Giacomozz's comment comes after reports George Hennard argued with women who drove through his middle-class Belton neighborhood. And after Hennard drove his pickup truck through a window at Luby's and opened fire, there comes another question. It's reported Hennard wrote a letter to 2 women last June. In it, he referred to female vipers. But police need to know more about this man who applied to be a merchant marine.
Now, we're talking to family members, anybody that knows him, that has any information they can give on his emotional state.
But police are beginning to put together a profile of a troubled man, a man without a job, a man with a prior criminal record.
Narcotics possession, I think, was just 1 joint of marijuana, was minor. We won't know until the results of the autopsy are through and published whether the individual was on drugs, whether he was intoxicated, or whether he's just emotionally unstable.
People in the cafeteria at the time Hennard went on his rampage say he yelled, "This is what Bell County has done to me." Hennard's neighbors say that reference may have something to do with this brick wall around his home. A brick wall we're told the city of Belton asked him to repair. Do you know anything about that?
No, we don't.
But it really makes little difference who Hennard was. What is of significance and unexplainable is the action he took.
It's a trite phrase, but you can't put it in words. There is no way to describe the tragic scene.
Time will never erase these scenes from the memory of the people of Killeen. It would become the nation's worst mass murder. But erasing memories is not what they are about here. They are about going forward, about healing. Reopening the restaurant, a move most feel is in the right direction.
We've had a lot of discussions about it in the community and with the directors and administrators of Luby's, and we feel like it's the only thing to do. And it was, they were, I think, glad to hear that it was an expression of the community in an overwhelming way, asking them to reopen.
The mayor says he speaks not for just the business community, but for Killeen as a whole. His spiritual counterparts say they too support reopening.
I really believe that this community would have healed whether Luby's stayed or didn't stay. I think its staying has helped.
Last-minute preparations and employee briefings are all that is left to do at the cafeteria. At 10:45, they'll open their doors again. And in doing so, hope that they can close the door, at least partially, on what everyone agrees was the darkest day in this city's history. In Killeen, Paul Venema reporting. They tried to act as though it was business as usual, but the simple fact is, it was not. Of the 43 employees who worked here 5 months ago, 40 are back at work. Some are nervous.
I'm just nervous because I don't want anybody to do nothing crazy again, and that's just that feeling you get. I guess it's normal. I can't help it, but I'm ready to start back to work.
For many, there was some doubt about coming back.
I think everybody had second thoughts. Nobody just didn't say, well, I'm just going to come back to work and just didn't think about it. I think everybody had second thoughts, you know, and had to pull themselves together and whether they wanted to work or didn't want to work, you know. And I was one of them that said, I'm just going to work, come back.
Before opening for business, Luby's executives showed sketches of a memorial to be built in honor of the victims of the tragedy. It will be erected at a local park, not at the restaurant. As for reopening, it was more of a personal than a business decision.
We haven't looked at it from a standpoint of a business venture as much as we have trying to do what we think was the right thing to do.
Judging from the customers who showed up for lunch, it was indeed the right thing to do. Many were here on the day George Hennard launched his murderous invasion.
I remember the pickup coming through and making an awful sound, and we thought it had been somebody maybe had a heart attack. And somebody went over to help him, and he started shooting. And someone said, get her under the tables, and we got her under him.
Being here today, Betty May said, softens the harsh memories. Her lunch partner that day agrees.
There's a need that I feel like I have to go back in, and then I can put it all behind me and start and enjoy this